coming. I'm Jeanette Wing. I'm the Science Director for the Data Science Institute and Professor of Computer Science. Is this mic working? Okay, great. Do I really need a mic? So I wanted to, first of all, spend some of my time giving you some updates about the Data Science Institute, Data Science at Columbia University, share a few, just really a sampling of research highlights, especially talk about some of the plans for the future, and then ask some of the members of my leadership team to come up stage and field questions, and you can ask whatever you want. Okay, so let me get started. Data Science at Columbia. I start with my grand vision for Columbia University, and that is to be the world leader in data science. Hands down, easy. I have a three-part mission. I can tell you where I think we are, by the way. You can ask me that in Q&A. I have a three-part mission statement, which all the data science members have now memorized. But to share with everyone, it starts with advance the state-of-the-art data science. This is about doing basic research. It's about pushing the frontiers of the field. And what's interesting about this part of the mission statement, of course, is that data science itself is still a new emerging field. We are, honest to goodness, still trying to define the foundations of data science, the application areas, and the whole methods and tools that surround data science as a field, as a discipline. For Columbia University, the next part of my mission statement is quite germane, and that is to transform all field professions and sectors through the application of data science. And why I say Columbia University being a full-fledged university, has all disciplines, all professions, all sectors actually represented. And so what has been quite gratifying to me in coming just a year ago to Columbia is that I thought I would have to go around and cajole all the deans and the department chairs and the faculty that data is in their future and data science is in their future. It's been just the opposite. It's been more that they've been coming knocking on my door saying, we have this really interesting data sets. We need your data science expertise to help us unlock the mysteries of this data. So this has been quite gratifying. The last part of my mission statement really also speaks, I think, to the sensibilities of the students and faculty and staff who are attracted to working at a place like Columbia. And that is ensure the responsible use of data to benefit society. Here, there are really two parts. There's the kinds of problems I seek for all of us collectively to tackle are the societal grand challenges, whether they're healthcare, energy, climate, social justice, the kinds of problems that really push all of us here at Columbia in terms of our research, in terms of our education. But the other part, this part of the mission statement, ensure the responsible use, I think is quite timely and quite important. And that is really ensuring that the collection, all the way from the collection of data through the analysis of data and the storytelling about the data, takes into consideration the privacy and ethical concerns about the data, especially, of course, if it's data collected about people. This is the kind of big data that organizations are collecting about us in particular. So I think responsible use really speaks to bottom line for education. It speaks to making sure that our students are trained in data ethics. And it speaks to our researchers in terms of asking ourselves when we're collecting data, when we're analyzing data, are we ensuring that we keep the privacy of the individuals preserved? Are we ensuring that we are really using data in a responsible way? So I summarized my three-part mission statement into this three-word tagline, data for good. Please memorize my tagline, data for good. T-shirts are coming out shortly, I believe. And so this is really what I want data science at Columbia University to stand for. And I think it's really resonated quite well with the students, faculty, and staff across campus. And also beyond. So we are a quite expansive and comprehensive institute in that we have over 300 affiliated faculty across 12 different schools and growing. And so if you are here and you are a data science member, you should see your face up there. Maybe Max, you're too new, but we'll put your face up there. You should certainly see your school up there. So when I think about the Data Science Institute at Columbia University, I feel very lucky in that the Data Science Institute is by definition, by design, a university-wide institute. You can see that from here, but also university level. What does that mean? I think our opportunity by being university-wide and university level, and our responsibility is to do what we wouldn't normally be able to do at any university, which is which universities that are usually organized by discipline, by sector or profession. And so, intellectually, the argument is data is everywhere. Everyone has data. And the scientific methods that are coming out of data science can be applicable to any of that data. And I think if you look at the demand by industry for data scientists, that basically speaks for the interest and the need for us in universities to be training the students with the skills that they will need wherever they go. But the point I really wanted to make about university level and university-wide is that we, as a Data Science Institute, really have the opportunity and responsibility to transcend these disciplinary boundaries that are typical in a university. And as such, I aim very ambitiously for the Data Science Institute to strive to do what no one person, no one organization, no one discipline can do alone. And that's why tackling societal gun challenges is within our reach. So last year, I enumerated a few priorities for this past year. I want to go through those, plus also beyond this past year and beyond this year. So I'm going to first start with priorities I defined for the Institute. And they are as follows. First of all, I came in and I wanted to enhance the visibility of our research portfolio. That actually means two things. First is find out what research is actually going on through the members of the Data Science Institute. And one way I do that is I actually solicit a lot of input from all the faculty affiliated with the Data Science Institute and tell me what recent publications they've had, what stories can I tell about their research. And I will give you a few snippets later on in my talk. But the other part was enhance the visibility, and that's where I really needed to hire someone like Michelle, who will work on our communication strategy, our media strategy, and you will hear from her later. That was the top priority. The second is we have an excellent master's program, and I'll give you some numbers later. And I wanted to ensure that we maintain the excellence of that master's program. So Chen so kindly agreed to basically oversee all educational efforts for the Data Science Institute. And she will say some more beyond what I say about the master's program and the panel. Moreover, I wanted to raise the bar on all we do in terms of research, education, external engagements. And I'll give you some examples of where I think we have raised the bar and we successfully are on track. I wanted to build community within the Institute and across campus. And I think that I've worked very hard on this part of the priority for the last year, and I continue to do that, engaging with all the deans and faculty across campus, but also within the Data Science Institute, holding faculty meetings, having retreats, and having town halls. And finally, raise funds to grow and sustain the Institute for the long term. Ralph Scala is not here, but he is in charge of helping me fundraise for the Institute. And so that's also, we've also made progress on that. But beyond the Institute, I actually view the Institute as an excuse for changing the culture at Columbia. My vision is to change the culture to support multidisciplinary collaborative research across the university. And again, with an institute that is university-wide and university level, we have that opportunity, and I would say responsibility, to really push that kind of change of culture. The good news is that I believe that the highest, from the highest administration, the president, all through the deans, we're all kind of moving in this direction. We all share this kind of sensibility. So it's a good time for us collectively to be moving the university in this direction. For data science outside of Columbia, I wanted to start building a community of academic leaders in data science worldwide, and you will see how I've made progress on that later. And then finally, so I do think beyond data science, beyond Columbia, I do think about the academic community more generally, and I have this bigger vision than any of the things I've mentioned so far on building an academic cloud, and I will share with you my progress on that as well. So those were some priorities of mine coming into Columbia, and now let me give you some updates. So let me start with research. Immediately last summer, I created 3 programs, a seat award program, a postdoc program, and a faculty recruiting program. And you can see the numbers here. We got very good response. And I should also mention, although I initiated 3 programs immediately with Tien's help, we were able to add a 4th program that speaks directly to the undergraduates and master's students in terms of research. So we had a great turnout. I think it's quite telling that many of our master's students want to do research. And this past summer, we had 20 students in our first cohort. It's gone so successfully that I believe that Tien has plans for a spring announcement for spring projects. And I also wanted to do a shout out to the posters outside. They are representing some of the DSI Scholar projects. So please go and see them. They're coming from, IEOR, EE, computer science, but also the English department, psychiatry department, so it's really quite expansive. And that has been my general theme for all these programs. Make sure that the whole university knows they are invited to be part of these programs. And now I'm going to show how we were able to execute on that. So for the 5 data science seed grant projects, you'll see what's interesting here are the collaborations across the different units across the entire university. Each one has novel collaboration. So, I think the first one has many collaborators. The second one really speaks to privacy about medical data. The third one brings in ethics for self-driving cars. The 4th one speaks to fake news, but it brings in psychologists and mind-brain behavior people, as well as applied math, machine learning, and so on. And the last one is a true collaboration between astronomy and computer science, with the hope that using language can help us understand how to explain why it is we see so many exoplanets popping up. These are very novel collaborations, and that really speaks to the purpose of the seed grant, to give you money for a project that no funding agency would risk giving you money for, but we will take that risk to get you started. We have a dynamite set of postdocs. Again, notice that each one has co-advisors. This is, again, deliberate to try to bring collaborations across the university together in possibly areas that usually you wouldn't see. So I'm going to be flashing a lot of these slides. I don't expect you to read all the details. We also have 3 new faculty members, and this is a result directly of the faculty recruiting program that I set up. So Max is right here in the front row. Tamar, I think, couldn't make it. Kellen Funk is in the law school. So again, public policy, nursing, and law, really showing how much the data science institute want to work across the university. We also have a new kind of what I would call faculty member. I call them they're research scientists by title. But these are the people who are basically full-time. They range from people who do full-time independent research, pushing and promoting and advancing the state of the art in data science, all the way to people who are very interested in working with others across campus, applying their data science expertise, working with the data set that others are coming to us with and saying, can you light up this data? Can you help us extract the knowledge from this data? And all of these people, even though they're full-time researchers, or they actually are also very interested in teaching. So many of them actually teach as well. Andreas teaches for some of our core data science courses. Vince is joined with statistics, and Christy is joined with the business school. So my plan for the future is to grow people in this particular track. We have one new center, adding to all the other centers and the working groups. This particular center is focused on computing systems for data-driven science. What does that mean? It means revisiting the computing architecture from the hardware level all the way to the application level to help scientists who have a lot of data. And so you can imagine two ways in which the architecture has to change. Typically, scientists, when they want to do their computing simulations, they go to supercomputers. But supercomputers are not architected for handling massive amounts of data. They're architected to do lots of compute very quickly. So even that has to be revisited. The other way in which this revisiting has to happen at the architecture level is, of course, some of the algorithms that are handling massive amounts of data are not necessarily suited, I'm thinking about deep learning and so on, are not necessarily suited for supercomputers for sure. And even as you think about how data centers are being used to light up those algorithms, how does even the design of an individual server, let alone a network of servers, best help light up these algorithms? So those are all the kinds of questions this center is addressing. Last October, I ran a data science institute retreat. And one of the challenges I posed to the retreat attendees is to come up with what I call quests. Quests for all of us collectively to sort of tackle those societal grand challenges, something where we could see some progress in 5 years. I was thinking on the order of, suppose we were able to collect these ideas and then go after big grants, something on the order of an NSF Science and Technology Center. And so we came up with I was looking for 5 ideas, but I got 8 great ideas. These are what they are. I'm not going to go through them, but I can say that for some of these, we've made incredible progress. These ideas have turned into fairly substantial grant proposals that are still in process. But they've also galvanized and intrigued both people in the Data Science Institute and outside of the Data Science Institute. So for instance, when I was telling the Data and Society Council, which is like an advisory committee for the Data Science Institute, about habits to health, one of the council members is in the finance industry, and he said, why not financial habits to health? And so that led to a very interesting discussion, which, and again, these are the sorts of things that are conversation starters. Okay, so in that light, I am having a retreat in a couple weeks, and I want to push the attendees even further and really think big, even bigger than what we did last year, as I continue to nurture the 8 quests that are ongoing. And I'm challenging the attendees to think about, in the use of the power of data science, what societal grand challenge can we at Columbia really tackle and make progress in the course of the next 5 5 years. And I've asked for a very simple fill-in-the-blank here, a title which should be really stating your end goal. What is the challenge you want to tackle? What's new, and why is it a good time to tackle this? And then why Columbia? So next year I hope to be able to report on those quests. I should say that unlike last year, this year for the retreat, there's going to be a wider representation of faculty in the room. I asked each dean to nominate a faculty member or two to come to our retreat. And I got a very, very positive response from many of the deans. Okay. I also wanted to do a little bragging about some of the major awards in terms. Now this I'm speaking to the Raise the Bar. Raise the Bar this was really a joint effort spearheaded by Gil Sussman here at Columbia, but you can see the many partners involved, and this is really coming from SEAS and DSI at Columbia University, and this is basically a wireless testbed that's going to explore next generation wireless in this 1 square mile in Harlem, and that's the space there. So this is going to be a real live test bed, and it's also, you can see, clearly a partnership with the local community. This is quite a big deal. There are only 2 such test beds that the National Science Foundation is funding for the entire country, and we got one of them. So that's how big a deal it is. The next big award is the announcement we made this summer on the Columbia IBM Center on Blockchain and Data Transparency. This also is quite a big deal, I think, for Columbia to go with a particular company, in this case IBM, with a fairly significant amount of money to support research, education, and entrepreneurship in the general area of blockchain and data transparency. So it was a hard effort. I actually was quite impressed with both sides, IBM and Columbia, in terms of how fast and positive the lawyers worked together. So it was really surprising to both of us, actually. And I know there's an IBM person in the room. There you are. Thank you for helping. I also wanted to do a little bragging. At any point in time, the Data Science Institute has on the order of 20 industry affiliates. This past year, we welcomed 12 new affiliates to our industry affiliates program. Moreover, some of these are international, so you'll recognize a couple of the big Chinese companies, Alibaba and Baidu, but we also have a Brazilian company, NeoWay, and these industry affiliates really represent many different sectors. Of course, many of them being in New York City, of course, many of the companies are from the financial sector or the media sector. But you'll see J&J and other kinds of companies. Now I want to turn to updates on the education programs. Here are some numbers. Our applications were up by 35%, which is huge. Our acceptance rate is then declining, but it shows how competitive our program is. We have an incoming class of 38% females. I think what and these are great numbers, and the student quality is superb. What I have been pushing, not surprisingly, given my mission statement about ensure the responsible use of data to benefit society, is ethics training. And here again, I look to Tian for my gratitude and her basically taking that data for good seriously and concretizing it, executing in ways that really make sense for our students given the constraints they have. So for example, our capstone course is a great opportunity to really do hands-on thinking and training and teaching about ethics. And so it's really when you're working with a real data set that's perhaps coming from industry, you can start asking these kinds of questions. So it's not an ethics like philosophical ethics course on the side that you take in void of actually working with data. The other thing that she did last spring is to have go through real case studies with the students, and like the ProPublica story about biased algorithms and so on, and actually discuss these topics. The other thing that Tian was able to do was set up a Data for Good Friday seminar speaker series where she brought in top-notch people externally, people like Dana Boyd and so on, who would speak to us about their research in privacy and ethics. One of the popular talks being given around the country right now is entitled 21 Notions of Fairness. And that goes to show how difficult it is to nail down even what fairness means. We have been piggybacking on an engineering professional development week before our students even start classes. They spend a week, and in there they're learning ethics. And most importantly, I think, this and difficult and challenging is what Chen has been trying to do, and that is to actually inculcate ethics in all our courses. And that really means a responsibility that the faculty who might be teaching a machine learning course will have to take it upon him or herself to remember, oh, here's an opportunity to say and discuss an ethical question. So, Chen, you can say more in case I forgot anything later. At the undergraduate level, I'm really happy to announce that this course that Chris Wiggins and Matt Jones from the history department, they have been co-teaching this course that was funded through the collaboratory called Data, Past, Present, and Future. This is a course that can be taken by any undergraduate on campus in terms of the skill set needed to take the course. And they come out having an appreciation of some basic modicum of data science skills. The first thing they do is you open a Jupyter notebook and you start actually reading some code, not necessarily writing code, but starting to get a feel for the kinds of tools that data scientists use. And I think what's the honor is that this course has now been accepted as a science requirement for undergrad. This is a big deal. As anyone who has been at Columbia University knows, making any kind of change, addition, edit, modification to our undergraduate program, especially because the Common Core is so precious, is a big deal. And so this was done by Chris and Matt, and the hope is actually they develop a second course following up this course on ethics, data ethics. In terms of the collaboratory, this is just one example of a success. The collaboratory is actually a joint effort between Columbia Entrepreneurship and the Data Science Institute, and there are many different courses and a series of courses that are being developed jointly between data science faculty and faculty in other disciplines. And this is just basically a snapshot of the website. Another big successful event that we held was on March 28th, Data Science Day. We were fortunate to have a very important keynote speaker, Diane Green, who runs Google Cloud. You might have seen her name in the press recently. The other highlight for me was actually having a fireside chat with President Bollinger, where we talked about data and democracy. And I thought that was really he made some very insightful comments, and as a legal scholar, was very articulate and told the line, if you will, beautifully. And you can see we had a huge crowd, both on the lower stage of Learner and the cinema part. In the past year, I've been able to build a leadership team, add a few staff. Garud is in charge of all things research related. He's sitting up front. Tian I mentioned already. Ralph can't be here, but he's in charge of development for the DSI and Data and Society more generally. Michelle, you'll hear from her later. And then we have some staff Dipti and Catherine, Brendan and Jessica. Jessica, by the way, is completely responsible. She's over there. She set this up. She assured me that it's going to be beautiful and perfect, so thank you, Jessica. In fact, if there's one thing, thank you. And I can say this very sincerely, I've been in many, many organizations through my entire career. The staff that I work with at the Data Science Institute is phenomenal. I've never worked with such a phenomenal staff before. The team spirit, the morale, the way we work together, the way, at 7:30 in the morning, people are here setting up. It's just amazing. And I am so grateful to all of the staff. As much as I might be grouchy and stressed, the staff really comes through for me, so thank you. I wanted to also mention that I mentioned the Data Society Council. We have one new co-chair, that's Ben Fried, who's the CIO of Google. The other co-chair is Armin Avanesians, who pays for my chair. And then we added Alfred Spector, who is at 2 Sigma now, but he used to be at Google, and before that he was at IBM, and before that he and I were colleagues in Carnegie Mellon. And then Richard Whitten, many of you know him. He is in charge of Columbia Entrepreneurship, but he's a good friend of Columbia, and he also serves as a special advisor to the president. Okay, so now I wanted to, as I said, every year I ask the faculty to send me their latest and greatest in terms of their research, send me a paper to read, send me a few slides to speak to the paper, and I don't have time to go through that entire slide deck, but I thought I would just highlight 1 or 2 stories per mission statement, if you will. So in terms of advance the state, all of this research that I'm going to talk about, some of it has not even been published yet. This is like how cutting edge research I'm sharing. However, I think all of the papers are in archive, so that sort of counts. I just don't want others to scoop us. That's why I qualified it that way. So the first piece of research I wanted to share with you is joint work by Yixing Wang and David Bly. And this is on multiple causal inference. And the canonical causal inference problem is usually stated as a univariate problem. What is this variable that has a particular effect? So they are solving a different problem. And actually it turns out that the different problem they're solving turns out to be slightly easier to solve with weaker assumptions. And I don't want to go into a lot of the technical detail. I want to give you the high-level picture of what's going on. So the question is what multiple causes might have a particular effect. And so the way I want to set this up is a particular example that we can all relate to. So suppose I am a producer. I'm going to make a new movie, and I want to choose an actor for my movie, and I want to determine, what is the expected revenue I might get by choosing this actor in my movie, and more generally, choosing a particular cast, a set of actors for my movie. Now, what I have at my disposal is some historical information. I have this data set with different movies, the cast, the actors in each movie, and how much money was made. So now I want to choose the relevant actors for my movie and sort of predict the expected revenue I'm going to make. And you can optimize however you wish, but that's the idea. The little map that I'm showing you there, for those of you who are technically inclined here, is this is cast as in terms of a potential outcomes model. But for those of you who are more Perl based, it can also be cast identically in terms of a do action in the Perl terminology. So just generally, the classical causal inference is approached, solving this problem is approached in the following high-level cartoonish way. You think about all the co-founders I forgot to mention. So it's not so easy to determine causality because you have this confounding factor. So for instance, for a movie, the genre of a movie is going to determine. You know, action movies make more than artsy movies. If I'm going to make an action movie, it's going to actually determine which actors I'm going to put in the movie. If a movie is a sequel or not, that's going to also, that's a confounder as well, that's also going to have a potential effect on the amount of who I'm going to pick to be in the sequel, likely some of the same actors as the first movie, how much money sequels make, given how much money first movies make, all this kind of stuff. These are the kinds of confounders for movies anyway that you have to worry about. And so anyway, the classical causal inference approach is you try to identify all the confounders, you measure all the confounders, and then you estimate the causal effect through this kind of iterative process that's represented in that equation on the right. The problem is this measure all confounders is untestable. So you never know if you really got them all and if you can actually counter them. Despite that assumption, which is sometimes called strong ignorability, despite that, we plug ahead. So that's the situation in classical causal inference. The new idea for multiple causes is in defining what they call, Wang and Bly call, a deconfounder. And what's nice about this idea is that it's algorithmic, in that you can basically compute the deconfounder through this three-step process. And there are checks that you can do to determine whether it's a good factor model from which you get the deconfounder. And then there's finally, the nice thing about this work is there's a weaker assumption. You don't have to assume you've identified or measured all the confounders. You only have to assume that there's no unobserved single cause confounder. So now we're assuming confounders are multiple causes. There's still an assumption, but at least the way in which one goes about finding the deconfounder has checks, computable, measurable checks. So back to movies, just to give you a sense of why this, how this actually can be applied. If you think about James Bond movies, with the deconfounder, it was found that Sean Connery, who plays James Bond, his value goes up, whereas the actors who play M and Q, if you remember those characters, their values go down. So what that means is, to phrase it negatively, without the deconfounder, Sean Connery's value was underestimated, and M and Q's, those actors, their values were overestimated. And then once you have this model, you can ask all sorts of questions like, suppose I put Desmond Llewellyn in A Beautiful Mind to play John Nash, for instance. Okay, so that's an example, state of the art. There's a lot of interest in causal inference more generally. I discovered that as I was reading everyone's papers. Here's a slightly different take on this. This is now I'm speaking to transform all fields, professions, and sectors through the application of data science. I just want to pick on or highlight some work done in our economics department, economics and machine learning. They look at the problem of online labor markets, AKA Amazon Mechanical Turk, and they wanted to discover whether these online labor markets behave like other labor markets that the economists have been studying for decades. And what they conclude is that these online labor markets behave more like monopsonies than they do like other competitive markets. Now, I have to confess, I did not know what a monopsony is, so I will tell you, this is my learning now. So a monopsony is when there's one buyer for many sellers, which is just the opposite of a monopoly, when there's one seller for many buyers. And so what they show, and I'm just going to give you one graph from their paper, is that high reward tasks do not get picked up more quickly than similar low reward tasks. What this means is that there's no correlation between high reward tasks and the jobs that are posted. And so this is one indication, and their paper has other indications that let them assert that these online labor markets are more like monopsonies than a competitive labor market. Now let me turn to responsible use for data. I want to highlight some work that, again, is not actually been published, but it's an archive. This is work on PixelDP. And the problem they are trying to address is a very real problem. Some of the advances in data science more recently have come about of the application of this technique called deep learning. So deep learning is basically this many-layered neural network that you feed in a lot of data in the beginning, you train a model to do some prediction, and miraculously, it's pretty good. So deep learning, for instance, was one of the learning techniques used by the Go program, AlphaGo, that beat the human Go player. Deep learning is used in all the computer vision systems in all your self-driving cars, and probably the Tesla as well. So deep learning is here to stay. Deep learning is used for that Echo device that many of you might have on your kitchen table to do speech recognition. So it's not like deep learning is this theoretical exercise. Deep learning is our homes. So what is the problem? The problem is it's very easy to fool these learning systems by some perturbation of an input image, for instance, to get the deep learning system to spit out the wrong classification. So suppose I train this deep learning system to recognize stop signs. This is something you could imagine a computer vision system in a car being trained to do. It's easy, actually, to perturb a real stop sign such that the deep learning computer vision system in your car will not recognize it as a stop sign and go through the intersection, and therefore you die. So this is, now we're talking about life-critical systems. So what this group of people want to do is, how do we guard against that? And their basic aha is to take a different notion coming out of privacy, a notion called differential privacy. How many of you heard of that? Okay, well, it's a notion where you add a certain kind of noise such that to your input set, such that a little perturbation does not is commensurate with the output distribution of the model. I can explain it better, but I'm trying to get to what these people did. So this notion of adding a little noise in a controlled manner is really what these people did. So what do they do? What do? They insert a noise layer in the DNA, and they can control the parameters of that noise such that they can guarantee that any perturbation on the input will be controlled within some, that it can be bounded in the output such that you can still trust the outcome predicted by that DNA. So I think this is really a nice marriage of machine learning and privacy, addressing a very important, I would say now, societal challenge. And then one last story I wanted to tell you, and this is actually from Tamar Mitz, brand new DSI faculty member in SIPA, and this is some work that she's been using in terms of understanding how people get radicalized using Twitter data to fight terrorism. So she has collected, she has analyzed tweets from known ISIS activists and their followers on Twitter. Lots and lots of accounts you can see for some period of time, and she wanted to answer questions like, does anti-Muslim hostility drive pro-ISIS radicalization in Western Europe. And the charts you're showing here suggest that the relationship between the far right vote share and pro-ISIS tweets is stronger in areas with more hate crimes. So if you're in a neighborhood where there's a lot of hate crime, there's a correlation between the people in that neighborhood who might tend to vote far right or have pro-ISIS tweets. That's really what she's saying. She is very careful to not claim any causal relationship here, just for your technical understanding. Okay, so looking ahead, so that was just, again, snippets of the research that we do across the university in data science. Looking ahead, I will be a little programmatic here. We have a DSI seed funds program announcement out already. The proposals are due November 1st. We have an IBM seed funds program about to go out. Can I say when the deadline is?
Yeah.
The deadline also will be November 1st. We are literally working on lighting that up on our website. The postdocs, we continue to, I want to continue to support a postdoc program. Applications are due December 1st. Please share this with your colleagues inside Columbia and outside Columbia that DSI is running a postdoc program. Any graduate students who want to do a postdoc in DSI, tell them to apply to Columbia's postdoc program. The DSI scholars I already mentioned, we hope to have a call for spring projects, coming out this fall. The Obama scholars, I sent in my email message to everyone. I hope you all got that. We are looking for volunteers. Janice agreed to help run the boot camp for the Obama scholars. The Obama scholars are here on campus, and they're quite a phenomenal group of people. Data Science Day, I am happy to announce that we have our keynote speaker lined up. It's Brad Smith, who is the president of Microsoft. He's also the chief legal counsel. He has been quite instrumental on trying to get the tech industry to take ethics and privacy, especially of AI, very seriously. So I think he'll be a great keynote speaker. He also happens to be a Columbia alum from the law school. And finally, Campus Connections. Campus Connections has been ongoing, but I basically expanded it to be not just faculty and others submitting tasks and some magic happening where Rachel would do an assignment, but I expanded to what I call using this pyramid of applied data scientists. So at the very top, we have research scientists who work with faculty across campus, then postdocs, PhD students, master's students, and undergraduates. What I'm trying to do is put together this cadre of data scientists that can work with faculty and students and projects across the university. So Campus Connections has expanded in that way. And again, if you have a particular project in mind that you need some data science expertise, just submit to this Campus Connections website and we will work with you. So now let me speak beyond Columbia, beyond DSI, beyond Columbia. I hinted at this to you before, and I'm almost done. The Data Science Leadership Summit I ran 2 days before the Data Science Day. This was something that I wanted to do partly to show leadership in data science by Columbia University. This is the very first summit that convened my counterparts at other universities, the leaders of data science institutes, data science centers, data science initiatives. We got 65 people to Columbia on our campus, and it was so successful that the second, quote, annual summit is actually going to be held in the middle of October this year, because people just wanted to keep the discussion happening. I just released the final report. There's a wealth of material behind there. There's a bottom line I'll just share with you. Columbia University, two bottom lines. Columbia University is a leader. I would say that there are other universities that started their data science efforts about the same time as Columbia, and I will name them: UW, NYU, and Berkeley. We're all leaders, and we're all strong in different areas, but the remaining schools are just about really unfolding a lot of the programs that we have had in place, and grappling with organizational and institutional questions that we have already settled here at Columbia, so that we can get on with the research, get on with the education, get on with the external partnerships. It was really quite an interesting summit in that way, and it was funded by NSS, Sloan and Moore. The second big effort that really means a lot to me, I've been pushing, is this notion of an academic cloud. And fortunately, again, NSF stepped in to help sponsor a workshop that we ran in January. Now this is really coming from the computer science directorate at NSF. I am thinking bigger in two ways. One is that it's all disciplines, even beyond NSF disciplines. And it really is for research and education for all academia. And the real challenge here is to get the commercial cloud providers to see the importance of the academic community as an interesting audience. So because I was at Microsoft before, I know quite well the academic community, as much as we cherish who we are and our daily lives, is a very small community. And we're not a money-generating community. So we're not usually an interesting target audience for commercial companies, especially in the cloud. But we are, even though we're small, we're a highly influential community in terms of the students we train who go out then and make important business decisions. So there's a story to tell of why commercial cloud providers have to get behind this idea of an academic cloud. Okay, so let me stop. Data for good, that's for you to remember. And then I'll ask now Tian, Michelle, and Babu to come up. I know you have to leave.
So I just want to say just one
John,
little thing,
yeah,
and then I will.
Good. And Jonathan, you want to come up?
I'm Babu Iyengar. I have to run to another meeting, but my job is to facilitate research within the Data Science Institute, and I take that role to mean two things. One, facilitate your research, meaning we assign members research, and also trying to identify and nurture research problems of interest to the broader data science community. If you fall into either of these categories, please shoot me an email and we can talk. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruno.
Okay, so I have some notes written because I've been working on most of the last 4 days, so I slept 16 hours in the 4 days, so I don't know whether my brain is functioning, so I wrote something that I'd like to say. So first, I want to take this opportunity to thank some of the faculty members who have contributed to the data science education activity at the SI in various ways. So this year, for the first time, we have capstone projects sponsored by faculty members that they're opening their project for our students to participate, and which is very exciting for our students. And we hope this become a new model that we use the data science energy from in data science education to benefit research, at the same time providing very unique educational opportunity for our students. We also have the DFS scholarship also benefit from the faculty's interest in working with our students. So the posters are a great testament to that. So therefore, that I also have a lot of notes written down about the master program, but I don't see a lot of students here. So so that I will not waste your time here. But if you are interested in knowing more about what our students are capable of, we have several ways for you to be engaged at different level. So just shoot me an email and we can start a conversation. There's ways that don't use a lot of time. There's ways that you can participate 24/7. So it's a whole spectrum of things. And then there are, so the collaborative program at Columbia is a joint initiative by Columbia Entrepreneurship and DSI, where encouraging faculties and schools to think about ways of embedding data science education across the university, and we're here to help. And then I feel my job is not to do everything for every project, even though I think my department chair think that way, and Jeanette also think that way, but I got a lot of help across the university, and there are creative ways I know people have been doing to make things happen without over-consuming their excellent, their pockets of energy that we can utilize. So I'm more than happy to discuss with all of you whatever idea or suggestion, feedback you have on the education initiative, especially how we can use research for educational purposes.
Hi, I'm Michelle Hoffman, I do communications for the DSI, and I wanted to tell you a couple of things that we're working on. Especially, we have a kind of unique problem in that there are tons of faculty members, but you're all dispersed, but not all in one place, and it's easy to forget, I think, that we have an affiliation with the DSI when you have so many other affiliations, your school, your department, and stuff. So what I'm trying to do is to build some communication vehicles that are specific to the DSI and remind all of us that there is a data connection to a lot of the work that we do. We're working on revamping the website, which I think everybody would agree really needs a little bit of a refreshment. And working on launching an electronic newsletter or several electronic newsletters. And I can see down the road we could also build an intranet so that we can do some internal communication that's private and not meant for public consumption. One of the things I'm going to ask you to do is to remember that you're part of the DSI, and when you know that you have an important paper, an award, something that you think we need to communicate. Again, we don't have the luxury of seeing each other every day in the hallways in the building and stuff. So please let us know when you have a paper accepted that it's coming down the pike. It allows us the time to develop a communications plan, to write about it, and to publish it on the day that your journal article comes out. We understand about embargoes, we respect them, we don't want you to get in trouble with the journals, but we do need time to develop our program, our articles and stuff. So please do remember that we exist, and let us know when you have something really important coming up. Thank you.
So my name is Jonathan Starr. I'm the Chief Administrative and Operations Officer for the Data Science Institute. My primary role is to support the leadership in the Data Science Institute in terms of strategic areas of growth and execution. So as Jeanette mentioned, we have a dynamic team as part of the Data Science Institute. We're constantly having to evolve our roles and responsibilities and areas of expertise to make sure that we can deliver the quality of services that Jeanette, as well as the rest of the leadership team, expects of us. On the side, I'm also a doctoral of education candidate at Penn with an interest in postdoc, STEM, and diversity initiatives. So if anyone has any ideas about supporting the postdoc community, we just brought in our first wave, and I hope to work with them very closely. Thank you.
Very good. So let's take questions. Any questions from the audience? Comments? Don't be shy. Yes, Sue.
I'm very excited for the first time I'm working with.
Can you wait for the mic?
Okay. For the first time as a faculty member, I'm working with some of the DSI master students, and I just want to confirm what you're saying about how wonderful they are. And our project involves mining Twitter data related to dementia caregiving, and so particularly students are very, very interested in data crypto. I'm very impressed by their skills and their commitment. So I think it's going to be a wonderful idea to continue to reach out for faculty members broadly in the university to engage with.
That's great to hear.
So Michelle's team, I'm working on a story to highlight about the project we are going now this semester. I view this as a way to create more, to encourage more creativity from our faculty. So if you have a research project, you have a challenge in your lab, let us know. We're more than happy to find a way to make it work if we can.
Yes, back there.
Hi, the mic is on mine. So I'm Beth Hoffman, I'm a surgeon on the Buell medical campus, and I was just curious, sorry I came really late. Is there any interest in having embarking on projects or maybe some of those already?
I can't hear you actually. Could you maybe come up?
Sure. No worries. You know, you're giving me a presentation. Hey, so I'm Beth Hoffman. I'm a general surgeon up at the medical campus at 168. And I apologize as I came really late, meaning that I missed basically all of the presentation on projects that are going right now. But the reason I'm here is I'm curious to know whether there's any interest in embarking on DSI-related projects on the medical campus related to like clinical pathways, process improvement, streamlining what we do, workflow. There's a wealth of opportunity, I think, that I'm not an engineer.
So let me speak to that very directly, and that is, first of all, we already have many engagements with many faculty on the medical campus. Of course, medical campus is huge. Lots of faculty. I don't know all of you, but I have been engaging with all the deans, from Luke Goldman to Christian Solar and Linda Free, but also the department chairs like Joe Grifstack and DBMI, and faculty in system biology and so on. So through the various research programs we have put out, there is ample opportunity for you to actually work with other faculty on campus in the kinds of projects you're talking about. But even if you're not looking for money, if you will, but you're looking just for engagement, there are multiple ways that we reach out. More specifically to you, I'm so glad that both Sue and Istik are here, because Sue and Istik is not looking at me. His head is down at his laptop. They are the co-chairs of the DSI Health Analytics Center. So they are your first point of contact for, asking who on campus has data science expertise or would want to work with me on my particular project. So
I can give you two examples that we can start. Also, we start with an education perspective. So, two projects going on. One is with the architecture, school of architecture. They have field books from the past. They study how students evaluate a real estate development, and they have hundreds of them in the old way. And they want to know how to modernize it, how one can analyze it. Of course, nobody will touch it because they're old documents. So we proceed with an internship with the DSI students, help piloting ideas. And the Columbia Venture Technology have a similar idea. They have a lot of venture innovation transfer programs. They want to do something with them. So they identify idea, we discuss, and we also roll out with the DSI Scholar project with students first look at the project and try to pilot ideas. So there are many different ways we can start if you have a particular idea.
yeah, and let me just say that if I can share my slides with you, and then you will see very concretely there are certain postdocs that are actually joined between the medical center and the rest of campus. There are seed fund grants that are actually looking at how to use deep learning for doing personalized cancer therapy. So there are very tight connections, and you're more than welcome to tap into our reach. Yes.
Bob Chen from CSIP Earth Institute. I'm just curious, maybe I missed the very beginning because our bus was late. I noticed there are a couple new centers being formed in addition to the original set of centers. Is there a process by which new centers can be suggested, formed from the community? You know, how open and what does it take to potentially set up a center on a new topic?
First of all, Bob, thank you for coming. Bob is a recipient of one of the new monies that we were able to bring in this past year from the Wendy and Eric Schmidt Foundation. So I hope that project is going well. But Bob asks a different question. That's just a way for me to describe it. There is a process, and that process actually was set up before I arrived. If you have an idea, then I believe, and Jonathan, you can fill in the details. We propose what's called a working group, and that would be a committee of interested faculty who would be willing to kind of oversee and grow and collect the interest from across campus in the particular subject topic. And as you operate as a working group, and this is where I'm a little fuzzy on the details, eventually you propose to be a center, and then DSI will work with you to help you make that happen, if it makes sense for you that to happen. So, Jonathan, do you want to fill in some details?
Sure, I think that covers the bulk of it. We do have sample proposals that we could provide just to kind of help guide the process a little bit. Working groups typically work together for at least a year to demonstrate that there is clearly a need and clearly an interest. After that first year, you would then meet with the Institute's executive committee to provide a presentation on the work that you've done over that first year as a working group. The executive committee, in short, would vote whether or not they support it becoming a full-on center affiliated with the Institute. We then, upon approval from the executive committee, submit to the University Provost's office to then actually formalize the process for creating a center within the Institute.
I should mention that one of the working groups that is very active and I'm very much supportive of is called Computational Social Science. And this reaches through not just sociology, economics, political science, but social work and so on. So that they are I think, speaking to a very, very important, I wouldn't even call it application data science. They live and breathe data and statistics, and so I have really trying to help promote that center. It is somewhat jointly organized with ICER, which is the Institute for Social Economic Research and Policy.
Hi, Thomas Seeley, School of Professional Studies. So very exciting to learn about everything going on with data sciences. Since I'm at the podium, I'll be able to briefly ask three questions. One is, what's the timeline around requests? The second is, when will we learn more about the IBM partnership around blockchain, which is really exciting? And then the last question is around, let's say, impact and driving change with data, building on that team of data. So if we take, let's say, the Earth Institute, which has been around for much longer than the Data Science Institute, it's a voice, an influencer in the public domain around this period problem of climate. Where do you see the most opportunity for the Data Science Institute, or do you see the Data Science Institute playing a similar role around the data space?
Those are three very good questions. The first one, this one, Quest. Let's timeline through the Quest. When I first posed the challenge to the faculty, it was in 5 years, what can we hope to achieve? The Quest that we created last year are already, they're more at the big proposal stage. So I hope that some of them land, and then it would be at the order of, if it's the Science and Technology Center, it would be on the order of within 5 years at the level of $25 million, over 5 years, what can we hope to achieve? More of a typical grant. The quest that I hope to actually challenge the faculty in the next retreat is bigger, and in terms of scope and mission. If you're thinking about tackling something like climate change or energy or healthcare, it's making measurable progress over 5 years. Because I don't think in 5 years we're going to solve any of these problems. The second question on the Center for IBM Center, as I mentioned, we are about to launch the RFP for research. There is already a lot of discussion on the education track in terms of a couple of courses that we have in mind, and courses, and there will likely be an RFP for the general community to respond to in terms of other course design. In terms of innovation, that's kind of the entrepreneurship that is being spearheaded by Oren and CTE. And Satish, who works with Oren, and we're thinking about a novel angle there. Hopefully there will be more news on that coming shortly. We really are just in our formative stages. The research track is a little more, we know how to do RFPs, so it's easier to get something out there right away. The last question is a really good question. How is Columbia University going to distinguish itself and be a voice for data science worldwide? This is one of the reasons that it was clear to me that initial strategic priority was to enhance the visibility of our research portfolio. A great institute or a great department or a great university in this day and age is great because of the research it's known for and the impact that that research has. And so this is why I emphasize that a lot. I also, the Data Science Institute is interesting. If you think about the 3 university-level institutes, the Earth Institute, the Zuckerman Mind-Brain Behavior Institute, and the Data Science Institute. The Earth Institute, it's about the Earth. The Zuckerman Mind-Brain Behavior Institute, it's about the brain. But the Data Science Institute is different because data is everywhere. And it's more about the methods, the techniques, the tools that can enable everyone else to advance their own research and introduce new skills for their educational programs. The impact that I want to have on campus is quite clear, and that speaks to the transform all sectors, disciplines, and professions. And I think that's happening. And I'm working hard to make that happen through all the little programs that I'm running. And I think there's evidence of that. What is the impact that I want to have on the world? Well, that speaks to the third part of the mission statement. And yes, we all talk about societal grand challenges, but the opportunity for us to use data and data science is tremendous. And I'm thinking here about institutions here in, say, the United States that we think are here to stay. I'm thinking even the threats around democracy is being threatened by data and digital technology more general, by AI and machine learning. If you think about targeted advertising, on the one hand, which we are all targeted from, and this is why the big companies collect all data about us, so that they can be better targeted advertising. Now go back to the 2016 election. What was that? That was targeted campaigning. Same techniques, probably some of the same data. So now, when I think about what I want for Columbia University for the Data Science Institute, it's really addressing those very tough challenges. And that is the third part of the mission statement. Addressing those now new challenges because of big data, threatening to our own institutions that we so know and love, and ensure the responsible use as part of that. So the data for good is perhaps the high-level way to say it, but I think I want to put meaning to it. Yes?
Hi, I'm David Pimentel. I went to Columbia, undergrad.
Thank you for coming.
Actually had a New York high school reunion with my little university high school just this last Sunday, so that was part of that. So I went to this university high school on the University of Maryland campus. At 15, I'm programming for academic supercomputers. And I worked my way to college programming computers, undergrad in Illinois. And then my freshman year, I was assigned to help program electronic health record. And I was already studying EE for VLSI computer chip design. Did 4 years of that. Then I was back in med school. My point is, I'm hoping that one thing is that Columbia would emphasize hiring more high school students to help, because they are enormously productive. Very low cost, they learn an enormous amount, they contribute a lot. Make that not just something you do as a side thing, make it a focal point. Why? Because it helps to be multidisciplinary, to have that work experience. The coding can learn out. Even a lot of the probabilistic things can be put in terms that kids can understand, high school, college. In today's world, the upcoming world, you need the work experience, in my opinion, in these different domains. And it's really hard to do unless you start early. The engineering you have to do a bit over, I think, much of that, but like the VLSI and the medicine as well. But the software, they can start early. And it's really a two-way street.
Yeah. So this is a really good point, and nationally there's a conversation already about data science for all, and data science not just in the high school, but all the way K through 12. And I would certainly want, we can discuss that. As someone, people might know me for advocating for over 10 years now, computer science for all, computational thinking for all. I think data science, probabilistic reasoning, working with data, visualizing data, all of that is going to also trickle down into for sure, the high school level. So I think your point about what can Columbia do is germane. First of all, whatever national efforts are going on, I absolutely want Columbia at the table, and I will make sure that I will do my best to make sure that happens. I'm looking at 10, so side of my eye here. But also more locally, to piggyback and extend and expand and even maybe grow our own efforts that Columbia does already with the high schools. So I need to actually find out what those are. I think Tian and Jonathan probably already know. But something, let's put this in our, to discuss this. Thank you for that suggestion. Yes?
Jochen Weber from the Zenman Institute. Thank you for the shout out. I'm curious for the academic cloud. Can you say a little bit more for the next couple of years what across the university, maybe together with CUIT and other parts, that will have to play a role if there's already something of a plan? Because as much as I think data for good is a lot about how to apply data science in a certain way that not bad stuff comes out. It doesn't really speak to access to resources or infrastructure. And I think that's obviously another very big component in making Columbia a world leader in data science.
Yeah, and this is again something that even before I got here, because I was at Microsoft, which is one of the commercial cloud providers, I saw an opportunity in these cloud companies to actually work with the academic community to move, if you will, all the research and educational activities that all universities have to the cloud. This is a big idea, because as you know, Columbia is not there yet. In fact, most schools are not. So my big idea is really for the entire academic community to be thinking cloud first. Of course, reality will be there will be a hybrid solution that some faculty will want to local clusters or servers under their desks and so on. But inevitably, we need to move to the cloud. Partly because of the data that's growing and growing and growing. And especially for a university like Columbia, where you don't grow in space. And I think about people like Lisa Goddard, who has 500 terabytes of data, and it's going to grow. And after a while, you can't just buy more servers and hope that's going to take care of the problem. The other reason I think it's important to move to the cloud is for the data sharing. And so this is where, if we do this right, then not only can we share our data with our colleagues on campus, but we can share our data with our colleagues elsewhere, in other academic institutions, not even necessarily in our discipline. So the cloud, the API, if you will, for these cloud companies right now do not match the needs and use and workload characteristics of academia. There's some very stupid, simple examples. So for instance, right now, it's very easy for a student in a course to be using the cloud on some assignment, and then like somehow it's a runaway process, which then starts gobbling up lots of cloud resources. And it's very easy to fix this technically. You know, you have a monitor that detects this and stops. But what happens right now is that student goes very embarrassingly to the faculty and instructor saying, I can't pay for this, will you pay for this? It's a silly example, but in fact, if you think about the hundreds of thousands of students across universities, it's a real example. So there are many, so what is happening is I am working in two ways to try to realize my own vision. Locally, I'm working with Gasper Luca, who is in charge of CUIT. We have, over the summer, been working a little more smaller scale with Columbia World Projects to see if there's an opportunity to sort of do a cloud within Columbia that speaks to this. But I'm literally in a conversation with Gasper right now to go bigger. But to go bigger will mean a lot more, will mean resources, effort, and a real design. It will also mean that, likely me, will go to the Google, the Microsoft, the Amazon, and say, here's why, and IBM, and here's why the current cloud providers do not match the academic needs. The other problem is the price point. The 500 terabytes of data that Lisa Goddard has, the reason she's not in the cloud is that it would cost her $100,000 per year to maintain the cloud. Now that $100,000 could go to a postdoc or a graduate student. So where do you think she's going to put her money? So this is where the cloud providers don't understand how academics work. Don't understand, or they do know that we're not a money generating operation, but they have to come meet us in some way. So all of these conversations are happening at the highest levels, both with me, with Anna Gasper, but also outside of Columbia. Yesterday, I just had a phone call with Gasper's counterpart at Cornell. He's very interested in the same idea. He's coming from a computational science point of view, and he basically said, we need to gang up on the cloud providers and tell them these are our needs, and what you're providing don't match our needs. So the conversation is just happening. The workshop that I mentioned in January, that we just held in January, was the first step. But even for that, I see the bigger picture. Even for NSF, that was the first step within the computer science community, which is, it's a good community, it's my community, but it's not the big community. So you're going to have to be patient on this one, because a lot of pieces have to come into play. There are even the funding agencies have to change the way in which they do ICR, for instance. A lot of these little things you might think are little things, but they incentivize behavior in a certain way. So faculty are incentivized to buy their own servers because it's capital equipment. This is like, why do people behave the way they are? It's human nature. And UW is actually the one in maybe a couple of universities that have changed the equation with the funding agencies. So these are the seemingly small things that end up being big things in terms of making progress. There's another question over here. Yeah.
So the nonprofit industry generally sector is not very sophisticated when it comes to use of data. Are you, as part of your Data for Good, really working with the broader nonprofit community to kind of bring them along, even to some very basic understanding of how to use data?
Yeah, and I think the two ways I can answer that, and I guess Sharon should be the better person to answer more directly. We do work and want to encourage nonprofits to work with us. We do work with nonprofits. We work with government agencies. We're very close to New York City Economic Development Council. And I'm on the mayor's task force for automated decision systems. And also I've been working with Natalie Harris and her effort in defining a code of ethics for data science, and that's this huge nonprofit organization. We're always open to working with all organizations. And one way in which we could imagine expanding, our campus connections, if you will, is if nonprofits submit little tasks, and then we work with them.
We accept capstone project proposal from nonprofit. So if you're interested, send me an email. I will more than happy to connect. So we consider project proposal from nonprofit all the time. Also, we're doing a course with School of Social Work on social tech and entrepreneurship. So there is a recent trend that students such as social science and social work, they want to introduce technology and social entrepreneurship and try to make changes through technology. So we're trying to create courses to mimic a social startup for a nonprofit and to educate the next generation of change makers to equip them with machine learning and data science skills. And this is also something that we're trying to do with Obama as well.
And one of the nonprofits in the education space, and we are having a conversation right now, so we absolutely do. I'll maybe take one last question and then we can close. Yes?
There's a nexus, the cloud, the new center for computing, the center, how is that like eating out of the dog bowl? And like they have an aero cluster. Is the new center going to inform what we do for high performance computing on campus? And how is that sewn into the cloud vision? And I know the library, for instance, is also supporting data science by providing technology for notebooks, scientific notebooks, as well as bringing out data science there. How is this nexus kind of being integrated?
Yeah, so are you from the libraries? Yeah. So I should have nodded my head to the libraries as well in my grand plan for minimally in Columbia, but I think it's got to be for the academic cloud more generally. The conversations I've been having for Columbia in terms of moving to the cloud, in terms of a data lake or data platform for Columbia University, have been with libraries, Thornton, CUIT, and data science. And I didn't hear the beginning of your question. The center on that. So that's about research. It's about it's about architectures that don't exist today, but architectures that might exist tomorrow. So it's about research. When I talk about the academic cloud, I mean moving today all our research and education activities to the cloud. And that's, we can't wait for the research to happen before that happens, but we have to rely on the professional commercial cloud providers to be providing the right capability and also the right price points and so on to make that viable for a university and for the university community more generally. But absolutely, and when I think about my colleagues at other data science institutes on other campuses, the universities are a key partner. And I think actually TN has been working very directly with the libraries on data sets, data access, training, all sorts of things. And we are close partner with the libraries in that way. But in terms of the idea about data storage, archiving, and so on, that is the libraries. And I think more interestingly, it's not just about archival data, it's about more interaction with the data. Much like people talk about interacting with digital books, we need to be thinking about interaction with the data itself. in terms of the tools, the algorithms, the models. It's got to be a very dynamic, sensible library. And so we look to the libraries to be leading the way in our thinking about that. Jen, did you want to add anything?
There are several initiatives that the university is very keen about. One is I'm on this role as advisory committee for the libraries and in the subcommittee on research. So we think how in the new era of technology where people don't go to the library for books, people still do but less so than before, what research capacity or the research support library can provide in complement to the rest of other such as UIT and other things. Another thing is our library is as research scholarship, they want to, agriculture library is really keen about creating sort of a scholarship. What is a scholarship in the digital era? And there are what scholars need. So the library is taking a very systematic approach to think about, and there actually is the leader in creating the foundations for research computing. Because the DSI is also partnership in that, had the first round of workshop for graduate students and postdocs, and more are coming. So I think in data science and genetics, it really touches everywhere. So we think we need a lot of partnership with the rest of the university to make things happen and work.
Even Advancement has approached me on how to use data-driven for fundraising. So I would like to thank all of you for coming this morning. I think there's still some food outside and the posters. Are the students out there too? Yes. Go read the posters. And again, thank you for coming. And if you